Good evening.
Greetings.
Welcome to our PolyamAnarchy, the third and final installment of Chapter 1. So this should be Chapter 1, Episode 3. My name is Enigma Machine. And this is...
I am Anna Molly.
Welcome, Anna. How are you?
I am filled with Korean barbecue.
I have two apologies. One, we recorded an entire episode yesterday and I wasn't using the correct microphone, so it sounded terrible. So we are doing it again tonight. This is not an apology for anyone out there. It's a public apology to Anna for being a fool.
Offended.
Apology number 2 is to my internet handle, which I misspelled in Chapter 1, Episode 2. And if you go back and have a look at it, it does not read Enigma Machine. It actually reads more like Enema Machine. And I am not bothered to change that because that's re-uploading the entire video. So I'm just letting that be because I did it to myself.
It's fine.
Yes. Okay. So now we're doing the third episode, commenting on this research article, Initial Motivations for Engaging in Polyamorous Relationships. And we are going to talk about theme 3 and 4. So in the first episode, we talked about theme 1, which is values alignment. And in the second episode, we talked about theme 2, which is relationship factors, and also went on a deep dive into the definition of solo polyamory. And so in this final episode of Chapter 1, we're talking about when external stimuli initiate people turning to polyamory, and theme 4, sexuality, being the inspiration for people to become polyamorous.
Excellent.
Theme 3, external stimuli. The preamble is, some participants identified an initial stimulus outside of their relationship that facilitated polyamory engagement. In some instances, the external stimulus was a singular person with whom the participant and/or partner developed feelings for while in a monogamous relationship. In other cases, the participant wrote about exposure to polyamory from an outside source. Example includes friends or media. So, sub-theme 1 is one of the people in a monogamous couple developed feelings for a person outside their existing dyad. This sub-theme distinctly differs from the second theme of existing relationship factors through its emphasis on a third party serving as a catalyst for polyamory engagement. Notably, the existing relationship between the participant and third party varied. So that's interesting. So we've got a couple of quotes here that we can talk about. Quote 1, about 12 to 13 years ago, I was in a relationship with my now husband, and I started developing strong romantic feelings for his best friend. I didn't want to leave partner 1, but I also wanted to explore things with partner 2. Homo flexible, non-binary person, 34 years old. And then quote 2, I started having sex with one other person regularly, and eventually he and I developed feelings for each other. I spent a long time in denial about those feelings because it felt like it invalidated the love I felt for partner 1. Queer, gender fluid person, 26 years old. So I feel like in the first case, they were just a purely monogamous couple, and one person developed feelings for their partner's best friend. And then in the second case, they may have come through the swinging community.
Yeah, I think that's probably more likely to be how it was done. I mean, we can't tell if that person was cheating or if it was part of consensual non-monogamy.
Yes, true. Absolutely. In example 1, person fell in love with or developed feelings for their partner's best friend, which begs the question, where are the lines between who you can date and who you shouldn't date? Because I've seen a lot of people ask their partners, please don't date my best friends. Please don't date my friends. Nobody in our current friendship group.
Yeah. Look, I can see where it would be a good thing to have it a step away, But also, I can also see why you would be attracted to your partner's best friend, because you've chosen your partner for reasons,
Mm.
and their bestie might have some of the same characteristics that your partner has.
Yeah.
So then, especially if you spend a lot of time together, then that would make sense if you catch feels.
Mm.
And then it might be you've only caught feels because you've had time in proximity, but equally it could be you've caught feels because you enjoy some of the things you see in your partner in that best friend as well.
I guess two best friends are going to have a lot of shared values,
Mm-hmm.
and those values might be shared among the three of you. And also, yes, the proximity thing. I think a lot of falling for people is proximity, because we need to know someone and spend time with them to develop feelings in the first place. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's really natural to develop feelings with other people in the friendship group.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the rule of please don't date my best friend is kind of limiting, because it leads you to develop connections with people that you have no idea about, and you're not connected to their life at all.
Yeah, I can understand why the rule would be put into place. However, it might be better to have an actual conversation and not make it a rule and just say, hey, look, this is my bestie. We've known each other since whenever. I love him. I understand why you or her. I love
Mm.
them. I understand why you love them, but I'd really prefer that you didn't act on it in case something negative does happen and then there's fallout where I'm torn
Mm.
between comforting my bestie and my partner.
Yeah. It's hard, right? Because then
Mm.
there's resentment and you have to keep going on and seeing the person, and you might end up cheating, or you might be resentful, like, you're limiting my behavior with this person that I know really well. Non-Monogamy Help is one of my other favorite podcasts, and
Mm-hmm.
episode 88 is actually an episode that I really like. It's called One Rule to Rule Them All. And in that episode, basically the one rule that she made was not my roommate. And
Mm-hmm.
then their situation changed, and the roommate ended up living platonically with the partner. And then, because she was still living alone with her kids, and then she was sick, and they ended up finally doing the deed because they're living together platonically and they were available and there was some attraction there.
Mm.
And she felt really betrayed because it was the only thing that she ever asked the people not to do. But
Yeah.
even at that point, they weren't actually the roommate anymore. They would just happen to be the same person. And so Lola Phoenix, the maker of this podcast, actually goes, is the rule there that's the problem? Because if you didn't have that rule, it wouldn't be a betrayal of a rule, and the reason for the rule doesn't even exist anymore. I don't know. Please not my best friend might be a bit limiting. Maybe, hey, if it is my best friend, can we just talk about how that's going to work, what activities are going to look like? Yeah, just talk about comfort levels and mutual respect. And I guess one of the things that I specifically do is, if I'm dating somebody within a community of friends, is have a little chat with them at the beginning and just say, look, whatever happens between us, the most important aspect of this is going to be maintaining our existing ability to exist in the community, regardless if it goes well or poorly. And if we don't end up developing a connection there, that's okay. I don't want it to get bad and weird.
Yeah.
So we can still sit across the table from each other and play board games or something.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I had a conversation with my metamor, like, if it doesn't work out with me and your husband, I still want to be your friend because I love you. You're amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just really lucky. I
Mm.
think it's not a moral imperative to have a good relationship with your metamor, and sometimes you're not going to, but yeah,
Yeah.
I lucked out.
Yeah. If you can, that's great. But if you can't, or if there's just personality clash, don't try and force it,
Yeah.
because that can cause problems.
Yeah, hinges. Don't push the metamors together if they don't wanna. It's not
Yeah.
gonna work.
No, I mean, sometimes one of the metas might say, "Oh, but yeah, I wanna," and they might have the best intentions, but the other partner might be, "Look, I like them and they're fine, but something just gives me the heebie-jeebies about them."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes a person is a small dose person, but you still hang out with them every now and again.
Yeah. And I think if you don't necessarily get along with someone, occasionally seeing them to see if you can build something might be
Mm.
okay. But once you've decided, nah, this person isn't for me and I'm not going to ever enjoy their company, you're allowed to say that and never be asked again. Never be asked again.
Mm. In most instances, I could probably deal with most people in the context of a party
Mm.
or a larger gathering.
Yeah.
I don't like going to parties or larger gatherings anymore, but I have a higher tolerance for more people or more types of people in that sort of environment because it's a lower one-to-one dose of any one person.
Mm. And you can very easily just,
Go out for a smoke.
yeah, you can very easily choose the person that you're talking to because in a large
Mm.
gathering, you can select the people who you wish to engage with and say hi and bye to everyone else.
Yeah, and it's easier to sort of go off by yourself or take your security blanket person
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. The above examples highlighted a pattern of the participant developing feelings for a third party. However, other participants reported their partner was the first person to develop feelings for someone outside their existing monogamous relationship. Quote, my husband falling in love with a girl while happily married, then me falling in love with her, bisexual woman, 37 years old. It's the magical unicorn triad of perfection. Accidental unicorn triad. I love it. And then, second quote, spouse caught feelings for a threesome partner while we were exploring our sexuality. Hetero flexible man, 30 years old. I want to know if the woman caught feelings for another woman, or if the woman caught feelings for another man, considering this man is hetero flexible, it could have been either.
It could have, and you'll never know.
I'm so curious. Yeah, so this is basically the same, but these two people, well, the top one again, they could have come from a monogamous situation, but definitely the bottom example is they came through the swingers world.
Mm.
Yes, across these examples, regardless of who initially developed feelings for an extra-dyadic partner, it served as the impetus to pursue polyamory. For some couples with agreements that included monogamy or that allow for exclusively sexual engagements with other partners, one partner developing feelings for another could derail the couple entirely and/or shut down the exploration of feelings with the extra-dyadic partner. For participants in this sample, the experience led to a transformation in the relationship to include romantic or intimate connections with others.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching the internet the other day, and one of the really good TikTokers who talks about polyamory made a TikTok about swingers who fall for their partners and how making a rule in the swingers land, he says, making a rule that you're not allowed to catch feels or that you have to stop seeing someone if you do catch feels
That's
is just,
impossible.
yeah, it's impossible. And he said it's better to open your relationship and talk about the possibility of catching feels.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the justification for that is, yes, you're doing a really intimate act. It
Mm-hmm.
is very likely that you will catch feels deeper than what you intend.
Oh yeah, you're getting all up close and personal and sweaty and stuff.
I mean, for me, I'm just not that interested in we've talked about this. I'm a very weird, very demisexual, very romantic sexual person. But even I sometimes feel like what I'm feeling for someone goes too far, and I need to hold myself back from fully falling over a cliff of wanting to fly up that escalator. And it's not what I actually want, but in different moments in my life, I can be pulled into directions just on occasion.
Yeah.
Yes. And our emotions, I think, are the last place that we can't be expected to fully control or direct in any particular way. It's why I identify as painfully straight.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Have you ever been pulled in a direction and you're like, no, stop, they're an idiot. Why do I like them?
Yeah. I had a lover at one point, very briefly, lasted a couple of months, very intense, but anytime he wanted to initiate sex, we went and had a shower and I bathed him.
Oh.
I had to teach him how to bathe. I met his parents at one point and they're like, oh, he seems so happy and da 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 da. And I'm looking at these very prim and neat people in their very prim and tidy house. And I'm like, I have to bathe him. And I think that's where I kind of went, you know what? I don't have to put up with this, because that's sort of something that your parents should teach you as a child.
Yeah, and considering they were all very...
And he got bullied through high school because he had body odor and issues with hygiene. And he thought it was hilarious because he didn't realize, he's like, I ended up with this cool nickname. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. You've got a nickname. Yay, I don't have a nickname. And then...
Was it synonymous with smelly?
It was closer to Tarzan.
Okay. Nice. Yep.
Yeah, closer to Tarzan in theme. So, yeah.
Wow.
And he hadn't put it together, and his parents knew that nickname as well.
I'm confused.
Yeah, there has to have been some kind of disconnect, and now I feel sorry for him. Then it was just, no, I'm not your parent. I'm not bathing you anymore.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I love the normalizing pressure of a bit of high school teasing. I don't.
Work.
That's sarcasm. No, it doesn't work. A little bit of high school teasing is just kids not realizing they're looking at other kids and going, "Oi, you, be more normal. You're interesting, unique individual. You're making us all confused with your lack of acceptance of social norms. Get back in your box." Exposure modeling is the next sub-theme. This sub-theme encapsulates participants' exposure to polyamory through friends, dating partners, and media. For instance, one participant wrote, I met a man who identified as poly, heterosexual woman, 46 years old. Another participant shared a similar experience. Person I met was polyamorous, heteroflexible woman, 46 years old. Neither of these examples explicitly suggest evidence of a pre-existing monogamous relationship, which distinctly separates this subtheme from the previous subtheme. Rather, information provided by these two participants highlighted a new person as the exposure source. Other participants provided more context related to their exposure to polyamory. In both of the following excerpts, the participant personally knew the external sources. A lot of people in my high school friend group were polyamorous. I later dated a friend from that group, so we decided to be polyamorous as well. Bisexual, non-binary person, 25 years old. And I started seeing a person who was in a polyamorous long-distance relationship. The relationship was a very positive experience, so I chose to practice polyamory going forward. Queer woman, 26 years old. People in high school were polyamorous.
I really
That-
like that. That seems to be really cool because there have been groups that I've sort of heard about over the years of kids who are all into dating and things like that, and they're dating everyone all at the same time. I think when I was in high school, I just put that down to it's high school and they're not really actually doing anything
Yeah.
because I
It's
wasn't interested in doing anything with any of them.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I had similar misconceptions, but probably a bit meaner. I had a friend in my early 20s, I'll call her Blue. She had a collection of young men around her as well. And I didn't know if she was dating any of them in particular, but I was kind of judgy of her at the time, like, oh, these boys are hanging out with you. What are you doing? Which one of them are you dating? Just pick one. And I don't think that she fully had the language to explain, but I saw it and thought that's weird and bad rather than seeing it for the potential coolness that it was, right? Because none of us really had any of this language back there to talk about it. So it's really cool if this person is likely 25 years old now, or maybe they're 26 by now, due to the time it would have taken to. So nowadays, you can totally be polyamorous in school, or some schools have a community of kids who identify as polyamorous, making it a lot easier for this concept to sort of permeate through the culture.
Yeah, I think there have been sort of groups that have been polyamorous on and off over time, but because there's not the language or there's not the resources necessarily, but with the internet age, if you go to Google and say, oh, relationship with multiple people, you will eventually get to polyamory or relationship
Hmm.
anarchy.
Yeah, that is true. I feel like the heavy pressure of the moral standard around sexuality in general
Mm-hmm.
is shifting to allow a greater variety of behavior, but it's still wildly skewed towards monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, due to lack of understanding and lack of exposure, so some of the parents of this 25-year-old might be like, "Oh, you'll grow out of it," or
It's true.
might be thinking, "I haven't raised them right," because their lack of knowledge about their lack of exposure might just make them quite wary of, the standard tropes of it's not real love, you'll grow out of it, it's just a phase, which, the queer community has had to deal with for the longest time as well.
Mm.
Another participant wrote about their exposure to polyamory and subsequent desire to directly engage with polyamory as a result of media consumption. I had exposure to non monogamy as a concept, at least by age 19, listening to Dan Savage and Howard Stern, thanks guys, while commuting with my older brother while I was going to community college. A few years after I graduated university, I realized I needed to pursue polyamory dating directly, so I found a local community and shortly thereafter met my future wife. Heteroflexible man, 36 years old. And then, next quote, my wife and I discussed it as an option after watching the movie Professor Masterton and the Wonder Women. The idea intrigued us, and looking back at our previous relationships, realized there had always been a desire for something like poly, but we didn't have the words to express it. Bisexual man, 38 years old. Begging the question, what is this movie?
I have heard of it. Hang on.
Psychologist William Moulton Marsden and his polyamorous relationship with his wife, their mistress, who would inspire his creation of the superheroine Wonder Woman. Oh!
It's from 2017.
If I not watched this movie, honestly.
Hmm.
This is really interesting because more and more you see articles talking about polyamory, but I know some of them have been linked into our local Facebook group saying, oh my gosh, guys, go and have a look at how terrible the comments are. And it's really rough out there. If you post something about polyamory, the normative pressure of the monogamous people who come in and, lay their judgment out, and the shock and horror of polyamory upon first exposure is quite cruel and judgmental and confronting, to be honest.
I don't quite understand why there is a knee-jerk reaction against it. I mean, I kind of can, because in media you're sort of like, oh, he's cheating on his wife, or he's seeing a prostitute on the side, or he's, doing these things, and negative moral judgment, or, she's getting around, or that's a very close friend that she has there.
Yes.
And there was only one bed. I don't quite understand why it's bad.
I think upon first exposure, it's a new concept which had been previously outside the scope of possible thought, right? I think that's one, just enlarging your view of possible options for the world is difficult to begin with. And then you said something about cheating. Yeah, I do believe that because cheating it is within the scope of possible thought, even though it's betrayal, it's not so jarring because it's not that exposure to a new concept, which is often rejected out of hand without thought.
Yeah.
So this media exposure is so valuable, in my opinion, because even though people might reject it at first, it brings the concept into the scope of possibility where people have processing time that everybody needs to think and reconceptualize reality, so they can eventually reconceptualize polyamory as a better choice than cheating, because polyamory comes with good communication and honesty and not betrayal. And so, but I do understand, I get why people's first knee-jerk reaction is, whoa, hold your horses, because it's a new idea. So
that's true. I mean, there is also what we're conditioned to do. It's a new idea. I think once people get their head around yes, those two people are still in a couple and they still like each other enough to stay in the couple, or love each other enough to stay in the couple, and they've chosen that, but they've also chosen to go off and date other people. I think if that information is given all at once, I think it's easier.
Yes, if you introduce polyamory from the perspective of, we're having a great time and look, this is good, and I trust and love these people, rather than we're trying this out, and then you start sharing all the difficulties and struggles that you're having. It's like, well, all of your monogamous friends are going to blame polyamory as a concept rather than any of the specific people or any of the specific struggles.
Yeah.
These examples show how exposure to the concept of polyamory through personal connections or the media raised participants' awareness that other relationship styles exist outside of monogamy. This awareness led to interest in pursuing polyamory. Just personally, thank you for exposing me to, relationship anarchy in this specific case. And it took me 3 years to process through my monogamous mindset, and a further 2 or 3 years to really change that style of thinking that I had. And I don't think I'm finished that journey yet.
Potentially not. And if you say that you're done with the journey, there's probably more work left to do that you're not aware of.
Yes.
I'm always trying to do more work on myself. It's difficult though, so
yeah,
we're trying to stay gentle with myself.
I think I can remember the process of thought of slow change that's taken me a really long time. Like I used to think, well, when you open up, if they can do it, then you can do it. And that's the way that I thought for years. But now I think, no. It's not about a balancing act within the couple. Once you open up, you open up. And it's not a balancing act between you. Just because you don't want to do something doesn't mean you can ban your partner from doing it.
Yeah, it just means that you don't like that thing.
That's right.
Which makes sense. Like, yes, you may be, particularly if you've been in a long-term monogamous relationship, you may be incredibly compatible with your partner, but that doesn't mean that you find a new partner and you don't want to try different things with that new partner.
Absolutely. Which
Or
I
you may
think,
try the same old things that you have a shorthand for with your partner, with your current partner, with a new partner, but the new partner might not understand all of your shorthand and might not be able to give you the same experience.
that's right. Or you just, one of you might really like, one of your partners might really like going to concerts and you like that. But the other partner really likes going to the theater, which you also like, but they don't like both.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great segue into sexuality because polyamory is not only about sex, but it's also about sex a little bit.
A little bit. The final theme illustrates multiple scenarios with which participants engaged with polyamory as a means of exploring their sexuality. Compared with previous themes, participants classified under this theme reported a closer association between polyamory and sex. The following examples all suggest a desire for diverse sexual experiences. First quote, curiosity about group sex, bisexual woman, 31 years old. Quote 2, we wanted to explore casual sex with others outside our marriage, pansexual woman, 38 years old. With these first two quotes, for me, that sort of sounds a bit like going to a swingers club or a kink club, and in the first instance, having sex with a group of people all at the same time, so an orgy. In the second one, having sexual encounters with the same person over and over again, but because it's through the swingers lens, it's casual rather than a romantic connection.
I agree. Neither of those scream polyamory at me.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, the group sex one, like the amount of assumptions that are out there about polyamory and group sex. Like, sure, plenty of people who are polyamorous probably also like group sex. But one of the great things about polyamory is that you can, and relationship anarchy, is that you can create those deep and complex relationships that are more than a platonic friendship that don't actually have sex in them. So you can go away for a romantic weekend and do the snuggling and not the sex. And it's actually a fantastic option for people who are in relationships with uneven sex drives. So these two examples, the fact that they are all about sex, yes, polyamory is also about sex, but doesn't need to be. And so, yeah, they are just very sexy ones.
Yeah. And quote 3, role play through text with my wife. We had our characters enter a polyamory relationship. We then later do that in real life. So we agreed to try polyamory. Heterosexual man, 32 years old. So I thought that one was interesting. So they role play is kind of in the field of kink, and doing a role play where each person in the couple that they are pretending to be becomes polyamorous, I think that gives them a sort of a safe place to talk about it because they're not actually involving another full human being.
Absolutely. It's a safe way to introduce the concept into your conversation too, isn't it? Because
Oh, yeah.
so many people you talk to, like women often are drivers of opening the relationship, but men have commented that, yeah, they were thinking about it too, but they were too scared to say
Mm-hmm.
because the social norms of our culture are that women are the gatekeepers of sex. Like, that's not because it's good, but it is just because that's how I'm going to describe the social norm, right? So if a woman comes out and says, hey, what about we open our relationship? It's kind of less confronting than a man saying it. So this
I
is
think it's
just a
the way that it's
fantastic,
delivered as well, because the woman is generally more likely to have done a lot of work on herself as well.
maybe,
And
and a
she
bit of
may,
research.
and a bit of research, she may have also sort of figured out that, or had hints dropped to her that her masculine partner wanted to have sex outside the relationship. He didn't want to cheat, and he didn't want to break up with her, but he wanted more partners. So she may have, done the work, done the research, and that could be why she suggested it.
Absolutely. But I mean, this is just a fantastic how-to guide.
Mm.
I love this idea. If you're a bit too afraid to like bring that up to your partner, have a spicy text conversation
Yeah.
and enter into it in that direction. And,
And if you decide it's not for you, then that's easier to walk back and you're not hurting anybody else.
oh, yeah,
Um,
that's right.
you sort of go, oh, polyamory relationship in role play. Oh, that gave me some icky feels. Let's explore it, but let's maybe not do polyamory in real life. Or you might go, oh, this is a fantastic idea. Let's do this in the real world.
Yeah, that's actually really good. That's kind of like the type of mental experiment in which I think some fictional books are, because in our lives we don't get to experience all sorts of things happening to us, but through reading fiction we can experience types of behaviors that we can see characters in the books we're reading play out and consider whether we would do that ourselves, how we might act differently, if we agree or disagree with these characters. So engaging in this type of fictional role play can allow for experimenting of what works for you and what doesn't work for you before you actually have to go through it. And there's kind of a very side concept bringing it into this, but there's this idea of pre-grief. So if one of your family members is dying, but you know they're dying because it's cancer and they've been dying for 6 months, you're not going to have that extreme intense sadness, perhaps, when they do pass, as you would have if they died suddenly and it was unplanned, or suddenly and out of the blue. Taking that concept and bringing it into using thought experiments to pre-process emotions before they actually may happen in real life can actually somewhat dull the intensity of the emotion when that thing does actually happen. And I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Taking very disparate themes and like wrapping them together into a thought turducken.
It's a good time. For other participants, concerns about sexual needs underlined their decision to engage with polyamory. These needs may have been participants' unmet needs by their partner, partner's unmet needs by the participant, or a combination of both. One participant reported a relatively low libido in relation to their partner. This participant expressed a desire for their partner to experience sexual satisfaction outside of their relationship. Quote, my husband and I started discussing opening our marriage when I became totally uninterested in sex. About a year after we opened it, my libido came roaring back, so now I have a boyfriend and he has a girlfriend. Bisexual woman, 53 years old.
But I read an article just today which referenced 6 different longitudinal studies which show that women in long-term relationships need more variety or else they will lose their libido and their interest in sex. And that happens between 1 and 4 years into a monogamous relationship. So variety, variety, variety otherwise the woman's libido might go away. And I think it was something like 6 to 12 years, but it was maximum of 12 years for men.
Mm-hmm.
That makes perfect sense because a year after we opened it, my libido came roaring back because variety was offered, right? And another thing that I've heard people say is once you do open a marriage, the sex in the primary or in the first relationship gets
Mm-hmm.
better because variety has been introduced, and sharing that experience with different people makes it a bit different back at home as well, so to speak.
Yeah. These responses cumulatively illustrate the broader umbrella of the term sexuality. Within this theme, participants spoke about shared sexual fantasies, disparate sexual interests, and discrepant sexual desires as precursors to polyamory engagement. Sometimes the decision to pursue polyamory derived from unmet sexual needs in the relationship. For others, polyamory facilitated sexual exploration and novel sexual experiences with or without their partner's involvement. So, with your partner's involvement reads to me like swinging or threesomes or group sex like that.
Mm.
And without is more what you and I would think of about relationship anarchy, consensual non monogamy, or dating.
Yeah, they've said this in a very non-controversial way because I would say facilitate sexual exploration, novel sexual experiences with their partner involved is not polyamory, or it's unethical unicorn hunting if that is a requirement. If it's a requirement for sex to happen that everybody needs to be involved, not ethical. So
Yeah, that sounds like a rule ultimatum from someone who is insecure. For me, I understand why you'd have it, but also it's a bit icky.
Yeah. Let's read the discussion section perhaps for this theme 3, external stimuli. Other participants were unaware of or had not seriously considered polyamory as a relationship style prior to an outside stimulus prompting internal reflection. These stimuli differed from the previous category in that the initial stimulus was external to a pre-existing relationship. Developed feelings for a person outside a pre-existing dyad. Relationships do not exist in a vacuum and may be influenced by the surrounding environment. I'm shocked. They didn't reference that, so I guess it's such an obvious statement they didn't think they needed a reference. Several participants described the intention to remain monogamous or to engage in exclusively sexual forms of CNM prior to meeting someone outside of their primary relationship who challenged these plans. Yes, people who are opening to swinging. Warning, you may have to look into polyamory. Unexpectedly developing feelings for someone in addition to their monogamous primary partners led these participants to reevaluate and update their existing schemas to allow for the possibility of loving more than one person at the same time. Through this process, participants became aware of possible constraints imposed by the type of relationship style they were practicing, opened themselves to the idea of having more than one emotionally/romantically intimate partner. These revised schema are similar to Wood's 2021 sub-theme of constraints of monogamy versus possibilities of consensual non-monogamy, contained within beliefs and value systems. However, in contrast to the current study, there are no mentions in Wood et al.'s excerpts that the development of these schemas was triggered by a third party. Nope.
Well,
And then exposure modeling. Monogamous couples who were previously not privy to the polyamorous possibility may have assimilated these positive representations into existing relationship schema, identifying polyamory as a viable relationship style, one that may better fit their preferred way of relating to others. I think that's interesting when you think about polyamory being assimilated as a possible relationship schema. Like, yes, the variety of available options has just increased.
Yeah, because with monogamy, you've got just the one option.
Yep.
Well, there's two options. There's you stay with your partner and you don't touch anyone else, or you leave your partner and touch one other person,
Hmm.
and then you leave that partner and touch one other person. Or with polyamory, it's like, I could touch all the people and then become like all the polyamorous that we know who don't want to touch any of the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Theme 4, sexuality. For many, sex is a method of experiencing bodily autonomy and pleasure, feeling competent, and intimately connecting with others. It is not surprising, then, that sexuality emerged as an intrinsically motivating force for polyamory engagement, serving as a solution to disparate sexual interests, discrepant sexual desires, or a desire to sexually engage with individuals of diverse genders. Although sexuality may be a motivator for engagement in any form of CNM, individuals who enjoy connection in the context of emotional and/or romantic intimacy may find polyamory a good fit. Furthermore, the focus on multiple concurrent committed relationships can be overemphasized in discussions of polyamory. Practitioners of polyamory vary to the extent that partners engage in purely sexual and/or casual relationships. Thus, while sexual motivations may not be exclusively tied to any one type of CNM, they do emerge as an important motivator for some individuals to pursue polyamory.
Can I comment on something from that?
Yeah.
This focus on multiple concurrent committed relationships can be overemphasized in discussion of polyamory. Practitioners of polyamory can vary to the extent that partners engage in purely sexual and/or casual relationships. I don't agree.
No. Yeah.
I think
Sorry, I
that
agree with
you
you.
can. Yeah, that's right. I think that you can also have a casual relationship, but I think that the commitment part of it, maybe you don't have a long-term committed relationship partner right now and you're still polyamorous, because I think you have to be open to that in order to define yourself as polyamorous.
Yeah, you need to be open to the idea of having any relationships or connections of a romantic or sexual nature, and you have to be open to having more than one at the same time. You don't have to
Yeah.
practice it to be polyamorous. You don't have to have any partners to be polyamorous. But if you are polyamorous, then you are open to that. And it's a conversation that you will have a bajillion times with
Yeah.
every new person that you meet.
Yeah. I think that if you and your long-term romantic partner open up to polyamory, then you open up to the possibility of a long-term committed relationship, regardless of if you ever achieve that or not.
Yeah.
You can't be just like, we're only doing casual. You are not polyamorous. You are open. You are non-monogamous, not polyamorous. And
Yeah.
I wish people would stop using that word, because I talk to people a lot and I'm like, oh, no, you're not using the right word. Moving on. I wish you had just said ENM so I could have ignored you to begin with.
I think the ENM is a good discussion point.
That's
And if
true.
they've got it in their profile, they may have done at least some of the required work.
No, that's fair. It's unfair to say I should have just ignored any people who just use the word CNM or ENM.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe,
I mean, you can if you
but it's
want.
the
That's totally up to you.
it's the addition of the word polyamory that makes me like, ooh, and then I'm disappointed. I wish people would stop using it.
No, I understand where you're coming from. Some participants held specific fetishes that were unshared by their partner. For these participants, polyamory served as an avenue to develop intimate relationships with people who share a passion for similar sexual activities. This finding is congruent with Vilken and Sprott, 2021, who reported that partners' discrepant desire for kink-motivated participants to question the importance of monogamy. Participants consequently discussed the process of expanding their relationship to CNM in order for one or both partners to explore their kink interests. I have a thought about that.
Yes.
So, kink is not necessarily sex.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too.
So, in a monogamous relationship, you generally wouldn't explore kink with another person unless both parties of the monogamous relationship trusted the person being explored with, or the exploration was in a controlled environment like a kink club.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can still be monogamous then in that way, but if you do expand into consensual non-monogamy, you can then go to a private environment to do your scene, and your scene may be focused on a certain aspect that you're interested in, but then you're not limited to where you stop except for the safe word.
Mm. Yeah, it's
Then,
weird that.
then if
Sorry.
you keep going to complete a sexual activity in consensual non-monogamy, that's okay,
Mm.
as long as, boundaries aren't crossed, safe word isn't spoken, that sort of thing. But yeah, so if you're in consensual non-monogamy, then you're free to explore the full extent of the kink. But in monogamy, you have to stay non-sexy. But with consultation with your partner, that does depend on what your agreement is there. Like, okay, is it pants off not sexy? Is it pants on not sexy? Is it fully clothed? Can the top half be naked? And that kind of thing can be discussed and agreed on and still be monogamous.
Yeah. Yeah, they've definitely conflated kink and sex because they've said a passion for similar sexual activities. I don't know, is there a word for sexy kink and
It still falls under
non-sexy
kink.
kink? Yeah.
No, it still falls under kink because kinksters are generally chaos merchants.
Mm.
And in polite society, you don't talk about kink because it's bad, dirty, and wrong. But people who know that it's safe, sane, and consensual.
Mm. Yes, safe,
So,
sane, and consensual. What's the other acronym? Safe, sane, and consensual versus RAC, risk aware consensual kink.
oh, I like that.
Mm.
For other participants, polyamory facilitated sexual exploration with multiple partners. Some participants found that one of the benefits of polyamory was the ability to explore pleasure with people of diverse genders. This is consistent with prior research indicating higher rates of CNM engagement among individuals who identify as bisexual or pansexual. Prior research has also identified greater interest in CNM among individuals with more fluid sexual expression and/or attraction to partners of diverse genders.
I want to know the causal relationship between those two things because, on the one hand, if you're painfully straight like me and you only want to have sex with men folk, then being in a relationship with a man is convenient. But that doesn't mean that that's the only man that I'm attracted to, that I'm not interested in a variety of different types of men.
Mm-hmm.
So is it then the fact that you're already eschewing social norms to some extent and you don't really need to worry about the rest of the social norms, considering, you've already chosen a unique path, so it's then easier to just chuck out some more social norms and get rid of monogamy as well?
I mean, probably, But for some people, if you didn't know that being queer was an option, or you had feelings of being bisexual, but you didn't have any good role models for you to follow, so you didn't give yourself permission until later in life to explore different sexual identities or situations. I think it's did you have the opportunity in your 20s? Did you have friends who were open and caring, or did your friends sort of mock you if you spoke about desires against what they deemed appropriate?
Mm.
And how much did you care about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So sowing the wild oats stereotype, but not negative like that, but more like, here is this opportunity for me to explore something that never used to be allowed. Very interesting. I think at the end of this, we need to talk about limitations, implications, and future research directions. Obviously, all psychological research, all research has a series of limitations. The most particular thing I'm interested in is the intersection between this research and the individual relationship outcomes, which may vary depending on the practitioner's initial motivation for engaging in polyamory or consensual non-monogamy. Because, like, we've been sort of judging them as we go through, and I think these final two are quite good. I guess theme 3, sub-theme 1 does have the potential to be coercive. Sub-theme 2, where it's just exposure and modelling by a friendship group, I think that's fine. And, low chance of being coercive, so cool.
I mean, there is the chance that you'll be going along just because everybody else is doing it. But equally, in our group, if you're not into it, people won't engage in that way with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll kindly let you know and say, hey, look, I know that you're not really into it. Or some version of that. And that's really sweet. Or they might even say, hey, if you want, you can refer to me as your partner, even though we're platonic. And, you might have that permission from a few different people.
Yeah.
And that way you're in the polycule, you're polyamorous, and you might have platonic dates with these people. And you're still able to be in a monogamous relationship.
Yes.
But you just have all these cool friends who are doing something fun that you want to be involved in, but it's not actually who you are.
Yeah, you want to be involved as in the friendship group and not in the hanky-panky spanky part of the evening shenanigans.
Yes.
And then in terms of sexuality, I actually think that's probably got a high chance of being healthy as well, especially for the person who is desiring more variety of gendered sexual experience.
Yes and no, because you could have gone into a monogamous relationship and then said, oh, actually, I'm bi or pan. You have to let me explore the gender that I'm not currently in a monogamous relationship with.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's the coercive nature of it. So
but if you go in with a good heart and open communication and do all the self-work and read a lot of stuff, then yeah, I think it can be perfectly fine.
Yeah. So if we go all the way back to the beginning and reference self-determination theory with the themes of autonomy and relatedness, it would be really interesting for future research to see which of these initial motivations align with a self-determination of each individual and how that actually results in well-being, longevity of the relationship that you're in, as we've seen in this qualitative evidence that being coerced into something which you didn't really want to do, or entering polyamory in a situation where you weren't having a good time, resulted in bad experiences in the initial relationship, but then perhaps better experiences later. And so there's so many potential questions that you could ask people in more research in this area. What was your relationship status upon first entering or upon first identifying as polyamorous? Like recently in a monogamous couple, in a long-term monogamous couple, single at the time, casually dating, entering into a relationship with a existing polyamorous person, like so many potential possibilities there. And then, how was that initial relationship? How was the first year for you? How was the second year for you? What sort of situations have happened? Have you changed relationships many times? How many different relationships do you have? How many relationships do you have right now? And ask all those questions and gather, well, how good do you think you are at polyamory? How good do you think you are at communication? How good do you think you are at, like, how much jealousy do you think you feel in different situations? Blah, blah, blah. So just love to know how people are going depending on all of these variables.
I don't know that jealousy is necessarily a relevant question, because that's a self-reflection thing that's not on the relationship itself or the relationships themselves.
It's true. I don't know. No, actually, I'm going to disagree with you. Now, I've thought about this a lot lately since a very smart person said to me a few months ago, it's okay to call that feeling jealousy, but you can separate out the emotion of jealousy and your analysis of whether the situation was reasonable or not. And if you think that the situation was not reasonable and that you were treating badly, you can still actually feel jealous in that case, but you're having a reaction to a terrible situation. And in a good and ethical and kind situation, you may not experience the emotion of jealousy.
That sounds like some flavor of something that I've said. I don't think that was me, though, that told you that.
No, that person told me. It just really sat with me as a deep truth that I needed to hear to help me through some stuff. So it stuck with me,
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I know I've said flavors of that. My needs were not getting met. I didn't have another partner at the time. And my nesting partner, when I brought to them that my needs were not being met, they were saying that they weren't actually doing any of the activities that I was asking for with their other partner, who was then posting pictures of that on social media. And I'm like,
yeah.
and oh, that's right. There was a post in the last day or two in one of the social media groups that we're in, where an anonymous person posted that their partner isn't doing the things that they need them to do. They're doing it with their other partner and posting pictures of social media, or the other partner is posting pictures of social media. So it's a very similar situation. And when Anonymous speaks to Hinge and says, hey, what if I planned a similar thing and all you needed to do was to show up? Or even all you need to do is to have a shower and I will pick you up. And Hinge has said, no, I don't have the energy to do that activity.
Yep.
And then other partner is again posting pictures of Hinge doing that activity with other partner.
Yeah.
And so original partner is just like, I've tried communicating. I've tried, getting this across. I've tried making sure that it's all planned. Where do I go from here? And unfortunately, I don't have any advice for Anonymous. All I could really say is perhaps reassess your relationship. If you're not getting your needs met, perhaps that's not the right relationship for you.
Yeah. That particular example, like there are a couple of things. One, devil's advocate is, okay, that person doesn't actually want to do that thing with you. They actually would rather do that thing with other person. But what does that actually say about your relationship then? For you, they're allowed to do whatever they want with whoever else they want. And they don't want to do it with you. They want to do it with them. Cool. Does that work for you? No. Right. Reassess your relationship. Because you might feel like you have the ability to get really angry with them and force them to do stuff with you. But in the long run, if they don't want to and they're being coerced into doing something for you that they don't actually want to do, that's a terrible position for you to be in. Time to hit the road, sister or brother, because you are not being treated well, in my opinion. But your hinge person doesn't have a responsibility to do something with you just because you ask first.
No.
So it's time to ship them out, maybe. But the other thing that I want to say about this particular situation is throwing around the "you're jealous" is so too often used as a tool for invalidation. You're being jealous. Like, actually, I'm having a feeling that is identical to jealousy based on not great treatment from you. And the fact that you're just calling me jealous to invalidate this frustration that I'm feeling is kind of not going to work. Because sometimes feelings of jealousy arise from legitimately reasonable situations, and sometimes feelings of jealousy do not. And they arise from situations where the person who's feeling jealous is the one who's kind of maybe overstepping or being a bit unreasonable. And the problem is with this sort of reality is there's no cultural script for us to work out which one is which. We have to be kind. We have to check ourselves for selfishness. We have to consider all the people in the situation and all of the people's needs, not just the person in front of us, sometimes further afield as well. Unless you're parallel, which that's totally legitimate. Like, it's just really hard. And you have to look at everything by a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
You can't just go, jealousy always bad. Jealousy always an indicator of being treated bad. No, it's neither of those extremes. It's somewhere in the middle often, and we have to figure it out bit by bit.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to sort of sit with your feelings and try and pass out where that's coming from. But
yeah,
that's a topic for a different day.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful.
Yes.
I love reading this research. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll do something about families, because there's some cool qualitative research, and I really wanted to talk to another couple of beautiful, very experienced mums about that. But maybe next week we'll do something of your choosing.
Ooh, exciting.
And I did find that article to post in the show notes. It's by ABC, and it's why more women are suggesting open relationships. It links to a lot of longitudinal data about women getting bored between 1 and 4 years, and men getting bored between 9 and 12 years. Not 6, 9. Yes. Anyway, there you go.
Nice. All right. And thank you as always to Craig for recording our voices.
Yes, thank you, Craig. And have a rest of good period of time.
Indeed.
Bye, everyone.